What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 529 here today of #AskGSM for Wednesday, January 17th, 2024. I am Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. First and foremost, just want to thank everyone who participated and declared their numbers for the 2024 Royal Rumble game over on WrestleRant.com, over on Twitter, all the other usual stuff. We had a lot of great people enter, all the usual faces, some new names as well. The, I think, 12th annual Royal Rumble game we have done. I did the first one in 2013. It started out as just if you win, that's your favorite wrestler for the year or whatever. Nothing really on the line until a couple of years later when I started putting t-shirts on the line. Both the WrestleRant radio t-shirt and the t-shirt of the wrestler who won the Rumble. And the men's Rumble and the women's Rumble, we had two Rumbles starting in 2018. So it's gone through an evolution in the last 11 years. We've done a lot of great Royal Rumble games, a lot of two-time winners, maybe a first-time ever three-time winner this year. Time will tell. But yeah, everyone declared their numbers last night. Pretty much 98%, I would say, of the spots went in the first 90 minutes. And then we had like two spots open after I went to bed last night, woke up today, and we had the last spot declared. So again, thank you to everyone who declared their spot for the game. I appreciate it. That'll be going down at the Royal Rumble itself, obviously. Nothing really you need to do. You declared your number in both the men's and women's Rumble. If you win the t-shirt of the superstar who won the Rumble or a WrestleRant radio t-shirt. So again, I appreciate the involvement, and I look forward to seeing who wins next weekend, which it's crazy to think that next weekend is already the Royal Rumble. I'm going to be there for that show. I'm going to be away all week in Florida for Disney, and then the Rumble itself in Tampa a couple days later. So I don't know when we'll be doing hashtag that week. I really am not sure. Maybe earlier on Tuesday. It might be later on in the week. I'm still not sure yet. So just keep it heads up, or just keep it posted on my social media. I'll probably, update you guys there as far as when I plan to record the show. It may not be up on Wednesday. I intend to be fully busy on Wednesday. I might record it, might collect the questions on Wednesday, but I might not record it until like Thursday or Friday and have it go up a little bit later on in the week. So keep an eye out for that. But anyway, if you do want to send in a question to the show at any time, you can tweet me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. We have a lot of questions for this week, so we'll get right into it here. Chris W. from YouTube, their first question was, ever since Halloween Havoc, I don't know what it is, but I feel NXT has gotten really cold. Ilya Dragunov hasn't really done much with the NXT title. Most of the stories aren't that interesting or anything to grab onto, with the exception of Lyra and Tatum Paxley and Braun Breaker and Baron Corbin teaming. And the in-ring matches haven't really been that impressive. For me, there really isn't just much excitement or care at the moment for the NXT product or the PLE coming up on February 4th. What do you think the problem is? I saw someone else say this a while ago, and I honestly wholeheartedly agree, and I said this in my written review of the show last night over at WrestleRant.com, cheap plug. I honestly really feel like that they did definitely take their foot off the gas when they found out they were going to the CW last year. I mean, I know for a fact that they were definitely going hard on NXT, having the main roster involvement, main roster championships defended on the show, the World Heavyweight Championship, Becky Lynch being on the show, and there still are some main roster names on the show. I mean, Baron Corbin's not a difference maker, but, people like Rollins and Becky and Rey Mysterio being on the show and stuff like that. They did that to get the television deal and increase the television rights fees for NXT. And now it's got its own separate deal on the CW, premiering a little bit later on this year. Once they got that secured, like 2 or 3 months ago, you can notice a definite dip in the quality for the show. Now, NXT isn't remotely as much of a chore to watch as it was 2 years ago, two and a half years ago, when they first went over to NXT 2.0, and the product was just fucking awful, especially for those first few months. And then after that, it just wasn't really anything worth writing home about, or worth watching for the most part. The PLEs were good, but like the actual television show wasn't really anything special. But they've picked back up in the past year in delivering a consistently solid product. I enjoy the weekly show much better than what it was 2-3 years ago. I don't enjoy it as much as I did before the rebrand in late 2021, but it's still better than it was as of recently. And I mean, when I say recently, I mean like dating back to 2021. I would take the product in the summer of last year over what we're getting right now, because you're right, there really aren't a lot of stories. Currently, watching the show last night, for example, and that's just one episode, but it felt like the focus was a majority of the focus was on the men's Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic and crowning a new contender for Lyra Valkyria at the show, at Vengeance Day. And that was fine, but there's not a whole lot of other stories going on right now. You have Dragunov, Williams, and Hayes, which has been kind of revolving around them for months. The NXT Championship picture, probably like 6 to 7 months, actually. The NXT Championship picture revolving around them. And that's a great story. They probably should have accelerated that a while ago with Hayes turning on Williams, but whatever. They want to save it for Vengeance Day, probably do the match at Stand and Deliver over WrestleMania weekend. That's fine. But, like, what else is really going on right now? They were probably going to build to Cora Jade getting a title shot at Vengeance Day. It may have always intended to be Roxanne Perez, which is a great choice. Roxanne Perez is great. She's been teasing the slow burn heel turn. I like that. That's something worth getting invested in. But there really isn't a lot else, I would agree, beyond the Corbin and Braun stuff. They've been gelling really well lately. That gets me excited about NXT right now. So it's not a bad show, but you are right, though. And you're asking me what the issue is or what the reason for that is. I think it's because they took their foot off the gas knowing they got their television deal for a little bit later on this year. I don't really think there's any other reason for it beyond that. They've had a few injuries. Cora Jade just got hurt, but beyond that, I mean, you can blame call-ups, but we really haven't had a lot of call-ups as of late. They called up a lot of people in the draft last year, but they replenished the pot pretty quickly coming out of the draft last spring. And Dragon Lee, even getting up, despite being moved to SmackDown full-time a few months ago, is still appearing on NXT consistently. So they really haven't had like a dip in star power. They've introduced new faces through the breakout tournament. They're doing some, like the Chase U shit does nothing for me. That, they had a few other feuds and have had a lot of other feuds going for the past like couple of weeks, couple of months. I mean, even Deadline, I enjoyed being at Deadline. It was a good show. It was probably the weakest PLE NXT did all year. Vengeance Day will probably be a solid show as well. They need more interest around like the tag team division, which they're doing now with the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. But like the family, Tony D'Angelo, they're doing like nothing of note right now. They have Adriana Rizzo with them. I think that's her name. I talked about her on NXT or on Twitter last week after I saw her in NXT because we interviewed her, RJ and I did, when she got hired a year and a half ago, which was cool. But beyond that, again, they don't really have a lot going on right now. The North American Championship, we just crowned a new champion, and that's cool. But again, they need to get more stuff going heading into WrestleMania weekend. I'm hoping we're just in a placeholder period right now, and they can get some really strong stories going heading into WrestleMania weekend to deliver a pretty strong stand and deliver show. That Saturday, I think, is when it's set for. His second question, did you watch the Hard to Kill pay-per-view on Saturday? From what I saw, it was a pretty solid show with some great matches in wrestling. And while I did laugh myself silly at Matthew Raywalt, the former in English, trying to make Dana Brooke debuting in TNA a big deal, Nick Nemeth working with TNA is cool. However, at the end of the day, they can make all the signings they want. I just feel them changing their names back to TNA will do nothing for their business or make them grow their fan base. Do you agree? Listen, I said this a couple of months ago. I thought it was a step backward for them to rename themselves TNA. Because they had that, like, not literally, but like I mentioned this for years, about a decade ago. RJ knows what I'm talking about. The TNA stench. If you had the TNA stench on you, no company really wanted you around that point. I mean, WWE took a chance in hiring AJ, and he was always, obviously, deserving of a spot in WWE. But despite how talented their roster was a decade or plus ago, and the product had its ups and downs on TV, the business behind the scenes was a fucking mess, and WWE for the longest time would not hire anyone from TNA. It took years before they finally brought in Samoa Joe and Robert Roode, Austin Aries, AJ Styles, among other people. James Storm for that cup of coffee in late 2015, although he was never actually signed. He probably would have been if he didn't go back to TNA, but you understand my point. And then they rebranded as Impact because the TNA initials were Death. And the TNA initials, honestly, at the end of the day, they're nostalgic, which is why I was excited for the show this past Saturday. I'm excited to hear Cross the Line again. Apparently, that's the new theme for the TNA Weekly show, which is fucking awesome. But the initials themselves are stupid. It literally stands for tits and ass. I don't care if it stands for total non-stop action. If you mention TNA to any non-wrestling fan, that's probably, for most people, that's what they're going to think of. And that's not my mind being in the gutter. That's just a fact. And I'm sure that's why Vince Russo did that, because that was back in 2002, 2003, when they had like the bras and panties matches in WWE. Vince Russo was coming from that era of WWE and WCW television. And they never were really, and it wasn't really, it's not just the initials, it's the memory and the attachment to people had to that product. Yeah, in like the early 2000s when it was great is one thing, which is I'm hoping the magic that they're able to recapture and rebranding back to TNA. But what I don't want to relive is like the 2010s and the 2012 was great, but like 09, 2010 specifically, 2011, 2013, 14, 15, like when the product was fucking ass. It was just not good. They were making a lot of mistakes. LOL TNA was a very big thing for a very long time. But listen, I'm hoping with the product they have now, if it's as consistently good as it has been for the past 5 or 6 years under Scott D'Amore, then I think they can continue to deliver a good product and they'll be in good shape. That being said, TNA, Impact, whatever you want to call it, GFW for that short period of time in 2017, it will never be a game-changer promotion. They will never really be able to grow their business beyond a certain point. Now, they did get their highest attended show with Hard to Kill in like practically a decade. I think probably since 2016. I would assume since their last UK tour would be my guess. I don't have the numbers on that, but they said the highest attended show in 8 years, which would go back to 2016 when they still had Kurt Angle on the roster and Drew McIntyre and the Hardys and people like that. So they weren't on the road at that point, I don't think. They were back at Universal Studios, but they were doing like the UK tours and doing the occasional like pay-per-views on the road and stuff like that, I believe. But anyway, that's besides the point. There is a lot of positive buzz right now around Impact. There's been a lot of lack of buzz surrounding, the exact opposite of a lack of buzz surrounding Impact for the past decade. And even with the better product, it's just because they've been around for so long, people got attached to the other alternatives. We have AEW now. MLW is a thing. Ring of Honor isn't really anything beyond AEW Dark, but, you know, still, even that has higher viewership and more people talking about it usually than Impact because it's attached to the AEW product and they can promote it properly, blah, blah, blah. Impact, TNA, whatever you want to call it, has a lot of great stars. They don't have a lot of like eye-grabbing storylines, like eye-catching storylines and anything that you really need to go out of your way to see. It's just a great in-ring product, which a lot of companies are. I mean, MLW is a great in-ring product. Impact does tell stories, but it does remind me a lot of Shawn Michaels' booking with NXT in that it's consistently solid, and it is worth watching. It's much better than NXT usually most weeks in my opinion, but it's not like must-see TV the same way that Raw or SmackDown or Dynamite would be, or even Collision sometimes at this point. I don't know if they can really improve upon that or if they just really found themselves in a certain niche. I mean, they know that Impact, TNA, again, whatever you want to call it, is basically a stepping stone for the other companies. They're well aware of that. Anyone who gets fired from WWE, they're not going to bring in anyone from WWE. I mean, they brought in fucking Top Dollar, but what they did with him on Saturday was fine, so I can't complain too much. Dana Brooke, again, another one. I don't think Dana Brooke's that good, but if they want to give her an opportunity in Impact, that's great. I mean, I think she can be a fine asset for that division, probably the most logical landing space for her in wrestling if she wants to continue to compete. If she wants to stay in the business, TNA is probably the best place for her and get a spotlight on her character, a nice refresh of the character. People were saying, oh, it's Jade Cargill, it's Timeless Toni Storm 2.0. We have no idea. We saw it for 10 seconds on screen on Saturday. Who knows? Maybe it will be. I have no clue. Again, Dana Brooke coming in doesn't exactly make me excited for the rebranding of TNA. Dolph Ziggler's a big name. Again, them hyping it up as one of the biggest signings in TNA history. I mean, this was the guy that was losing on Main Event a couple months ago. I mean, he's not a game changer for them. No one really will be at this point. But you can enjoy it for what it is and realize that it's an alternative to WWE and AEW, that you're going to get different stuff than you would see on Mondays or Fridays or Wednesdays, and different stars as well that may go on to Mondays or Wednesdays or Fridays. That's really the key for me. Micah does it from YouTube. Their first question was, what did you think of Jinder Mahal versus Seth Rollins, and where do both men go from here? Honestly, I thought the match was better than I thought it would be. We've seen matches from them before. They don't have bad matches. It's more a matter of the fact that Jinder Mahal as a world championship contender is not fucking interesting. He's been booked like a loser. Tony Khan had a meltdown over this last week, obviously, and came across like a total baby. But he wasn't wrong with what he said. I mean, Jinder Mahal has not won any televised matches on Raw or SmackDown in almost 2 fucking years. Although they did make me think, to their credit, that Jinder could have won the championship on Monday. And that was really more a matter of circumstance when he hit the Colossus and the championship belt and whatever. A couple things. That was one, how he won the WWE championship in 2017. And two, coming off of the whole Hook thing from last week and everyone saying, oh, don't hinder Jinder. Like some people ironically, some people seriously, which is concerning. Jinder should have absolutely under no circumstance, by no means at all, should he have walked out of Raw on Monday the new World Heavyweight Champion. Thankfully, he did not. But it also begs the question of why they even bothered to do the match. Jinder's not really a threat. Again, the near falls were well done. The match was okay. It was probably one of Rollins' weaker championship defenses. The Finn Balor match from SummerSlam, it was not. The Shinsuke and Nakamura matches, it was not. It wasn't even on the same level as the matches he had with Drew or Uso or Sami Zayn just recently. It was an okay television match. The World Heavyweight Championship did not need to be on the line. Jinder did not need to be on that spot to begin with. I question why we're not pushing Bronson Reed in that spot, but it looks like based on what we got from him on Monday, we might be headed in that direction either at Elimination Chamber or as early as the Royal Rumble. We need to make sure Rollins isn't actually hurt. I mean, we know he's hurt, but we need to know that he's not seriously hurt, and he may not even wrestle at the Rumble anyway. I don't know if that was even the plan originally. I have no clue. But the match was fine. Rollins will move on as World Heavyweight Champion if he's not seriously hurt, and fingers crossed he's not. We'll probably find out today or tomorrow. And then with Jinder, where does he go from here? I don't give a fuck. I mean, let's start pushing Indus Sher. Indus Sher should not be the Singh brothers, what the Singh brothers were to Jinder 7 years ago. They should be the main featured attraction at this point. They're not the tag team, the top tag team in that division right now, but at the same time, though, they do have potential. They can be pushed, and Jinder he's cooked. I don't know if that's the right word to use in this circumstance, but Jinder's not awful, but he's not interesting, and I'd rather see Indus Sher pushed than that spot. I know Nick Aldis teased the possibility of them coming over to SmackDown, and who gives a fuck? Just start pushing Indus Sher. Just start pushing Indus Sher. Jinder, doesn't matter what show he's on, Raw, SmackDown, or NXT, I still will not give a shit. But, I think Indus Sher still have a shot, though. Next question, also from Micah. Do you think we see Big E return to the Royal Rumble and be the muscle to Gunther and Imperium, setting up a six-man tag in Australia at the Chamber? Listen, that is pure fantasy booking. That would be perfect booking. If Ludwig Kaiser's out there attacking Kofi, attacking Xavier, and then all of a sudden in the Rumble match itself, either Ludwig's in the ring or Gunther or both, out comes Big E, setting up Gunther and Big E for WrestleMania. Now, we've all been wondering, is it going to be Chad Gable at Mania? Is it going to be Brock maybe? That's probably the leading candidate at this point, is Brock facing Gunther. I don't know if I really like that, though, because if Brock wins, he becomes champion, which I think is a fucking waste, but whatever. Big E, honestly, I know he's been Intercontinental Champion twice, but if it means getting him back in the ring, that would be amazing. I have heard nothing as far as his status goes, as far as whether he's clear to compete, whether he would be good to go. I mean, he's been hurt now for almost exactly 2 years, as of this coming March. At this point, we're at a point where he may never be back. And that's okay, because as long as it's not okay as far as, it's really unfortunate. As long as the guy can live a normal life and function and walk and whatever, and the guy's still alive, that's really what's important here. But if he can come back, I don't know about in a full-time capacity, but wrestling a match here or there, or just in the Rumble or whatever it might be, that would be the way that you do it. Setting up him and Gunther for Mania, doing the New Day Imperium six-man tag team match at Chamber, it just makes all the sense in the world, but I'm not expecting that, nor am I, even considering the idea of that happening, because I don't think Big E's cleared. I feel like even more so than Punk coming in, that a lot of things would have to fall in place for that to happen. It's a health issue. It's not a contract thing. With Punk, it looked like he wasn't coming in, and then he did, but, you can sign a contract at the last minute. Big E can't get cleared at the last minute. We need to make sure this guy's good. He probably needs to get cleared and go to Philly or Pittsburgh or whatever it is, and usually with that sort of stuff, we hear about it ahead of time. This person visited the city. That means they must be getting cleared, blah, blah, blah. Especially with a star the caliber of Big E, we probably would have either heard something by now or we will hear something by next week, and maybe we will. I don't know. I don't think so, although he is from Tampa. It would make for an amazing moment. He probably is not coming in, although that would be an amazing fantasy booking scenario, though, as you suggested. Joe M. from YouTube, their question was, will Trick Williams have more success on the main roster than Carmelo Hayes? With his look, charisma, and catchy entrance, he seems like a surefire thing to get over with the casual audience. Yeah, I've said this before, but I feel like Trick Williams, and other people have said this too, this isn't a bold opinion, Carmelo's a star. I think Carmelo's incredible. I think Carmelo can have a high ceiling for success on the main roster. The only thing that holds him back is his smaller stature. Now, the guy's not like 2 feet tall, but he is significantly shorter than Trick Williams. Trick Williams does not dwarf him, but Williams is like the type of height that WWE typically looks for. It doesn't matter who's in charge, Vince, Triple H, whatever, that they like out of their main stars, out of their top-tier talent, out of their world champions. Not that they would never push someone like Carmelo. He's gone over so far on the main roster. He has been used well anytime he's popped up on Raw or SmackDown. Williams feels like someone, a homegrown talent, that didn't have a lot of, if any, wrestling experience before coming to WWE, that they can claim they built from the ground up. Carmelo wasn't in AEW or Ring of Honor before coming to WWE. He had one one-off Ring of Honor match years ago, but he wasn't signed to a major promotion, but he did have a lot of indie experience before coming here. Trick is someone they can claim he is a homegrown star through and through in WWE. And he can win the world champion. And it's not like he's bad. He can win the world championship. He's only going to get better from here. He can talk. He's got charisma. People like him. Hayes can work as both a heel and a babyface. Williams was a great heel as well at one point. He's a way better babyface right now. He has way more momentum. But Hayes, I think, can work well as a face, definitely as a heel. He's fucking great. He reminds me a lot, in a lot of ways, of Shawn Michaels with the smarminess about him. And that might be why Shawn liked him so much and has liked him so much in NXT and has really pushed him, because he sees himself in Carmelo Hayes. But at least in terms of his presentation and the way he comes across, both as a face and as a heel, he gives me big Shawn Michaels vibes. And I think they're both going to have high ceilings for success in the main roster. I do think Williams, of the two, might have more of a chance to succeed and might be more of the... I don't know if Carmelo will ever be the guy in WWE. He can be very successful because the guy's great. He's a fucking star. Williams, just based on what WWE's pushed in the past, might have a better chance, if he can kind of stay the course, might have a better chance of being the guy in WWE or a higher tier talent than Carmelo Hayes. But I hope both guys end up panning out on the main roster and being success stories, because they're both awesome. No L from Facebook, their first question was, do you think WWE should go to option B since Seth Rollins is somewhat injured and have a cash-in? So you're suggesting Rollins might be hurt. I mean, he is hurt, but we don't know how seriously hurt. If he is seriously hurt, do you do a cash-in? The thing with that, I mean, how would that work, though? Because if Rollins, for example, and I fucking hope this is not the case, if he tore his ACL or has an injury that would keep him out of WrestleMania, how does Damian Priest even go forward with cashing in? Because Williams, or no, I'm thinking of Trick Williams from the last question. I'm still in Trick Williams mania here. If Rollins is seriously hurt, I don't think you can do a cash-in. I don't know if we've ever seen... I mean, I know we've seen people work hurt, but an injury like that, I don't even know if Rollins would be on the show. And if he is, he would come out in a boot. Can you even do a formal match? I would assume we haven't really seen someone get legitimately hurt and then have a cash-in. I know Taker was hurting. He was hurting back in 2007 when Edge cashed in on him, but he worked the whole match. Rollins, if he's hurt, I know he finished the match on Monday, but I don't think he's working hurt. He might, I don't know, but if he tore his ACL, for example, I don't know if you can even do a cash-in, because if he is actually hurt from a storyline standpoint, why would they clear Rollins for competition and have him get cashed in on? I would think, because usually in the past they've had to say, oh, this person has to be standing up, this person has to be conscious, blah, 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 to compete and defend their championship. I mean, with Rollins, if he can't compete, then why the fuck would they clear him for a match via a cash-in? So I don't think they would do that. I thought we might get a cash-in on Monday. I'm glad we didn't. I still say hold off Damian Priest until after WrestleMania. I do want to see him cash in successfully. I don't want to see him cash in and then lose it 3 weeks later. That would just be dumb to me. You have a real opportunity to elevate him to that next level. Damian Priest is great. Don't waste it by either having him get a short run, which would be better than him not cashing in successfully at all. That would be just stupid. We've seen that enough times in recent years. We do not need to explore that again. I would just do it closer to the actual Money in the Bank pay-per-view. I feel like that makes more sense. We've never seen that before. If Rollins is actually hurt, I would not have Priest cash in. I'm not even sure if you could do that. But even if you could, I would not do that. I was thinking yesterday, what do you do if Rollins can't go? My idea is, I don't know if Steve Austin would want to work Mania. I'm not even sure if that's a viable possibility, because there were talks a while ago when Punk first came back. Could they want to do Punk and Austin? I mean, yeah, but let's assume Austin's not a realistic possibility for, Punk to face at WrestleMania. So let's take Steve Austin out of the equation for a second. What does that really leave us with? We have an Elimination Chamber pay-per-view next month. I would probably crown a new World Heavyweight Champion in that match. I would not put the championship on the line in the Royal Rumble, because that has SmackDown people, and they're not going to... I mean, I guess they could win and then go to Raw, but you don't really need to have the World Heavyweight Championship on the line in that match. I would put the World Heavyweight Championship on the line in the Elimination Chamber. Punk would probably win that and then defend against someone at WrestleMania. I don't want to say Cody. If we're going to get Rock and Roman at Mania, and I'm still not convinced that we are, I'd rather see Rock and Roman one-on-one than Rock, Cody, and Roman. I think that'd be fucking dumb. To do a triple threat, that would be stupid. You could do Punk and Cody. Maybe Punk retains. I don't really want Cody winning a world championship until he beats Roman. I don't know. I feel like that'd be kind of dumb too. I don't really know. Honestly, I'm not really sure what you do. But you would probably have to crown a new world heavyweight champion if Rollins was out for a significant period of time. If he can't go until Mania, hey, listen, he wasn't the world champion at the time, but this happened back in January of 2017 as well. He got hurt in late January, right after the Rumble, hurt his knee, and he just got cleared in time for WrestleMania like a little over 2 months later. And again, he wasn't the world champion at the time, but they can maybe pull that off if that means not interrupting the run and like having him, forcing him to drop the championship. Then I think they could do that. We'll have to wait and see. We might find out by the time this video goes up. I have no idea. But that's probably what I would do. I would just crown a new champion in the chamber as opposed to having Priest cash in, because I don't think Priest goes to WrestleMania as the World Heavyweight Champion. I just don't see that happening. Christopher L. from Facebook, your first question was, how do you feel about the Deonna Purrazzo situation with her being body shamed by people on Twitter? I think that just like last week with the Andrew Zarian death threat story, it shows how vile and awful people are, especially on Twitter. And to her part, I think Deonna handled it perfectly. What do you think? I mean, yeah, it goes without saying, but the people that are tweeting this sort of stuff are obviously more insecure about themselves than whatever that says about Deonna herself. Deonna is obviously, anyone body shaming Deonna is just completely full of themselves. I mean, that makes no fucking sense at all. I mean, they shouldn't do that for really anyone necessarily. Guy, girl, doesn't matter whether they're good or not. Deonna's obviously great. I don't really think she has anything to worry about, especially from some unknown faceless dipshits on Twitter. I mean, this is kind of common practice. It obviously got riled up to her a lot more than usual with her post. I mean, she hasn't really been on a major scale in a long time. She was in Impact. She kind of flew under the radar. She wasn't really in WWE for that long or on a major scale on TV or whatever. Deonna has nothing to worry about. These people are just fucking bottom-dwelling losers, so... It was disgusting and awful behavior. Not surprising of some people from the wrestling community just making the whole community look bad, but these people obviously have their own problems to deal with and have brain rot of their own to kind of figure out and shit, to explain why they would be saying such stupid things on Twitter and other social media channels. Your last question, one rivalry I think it's unfairly overlooked is AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan from 2018 through 2019 for the WWE Championship on SmackDown. They had two excellent TV matches, the latter where Daniel Bryan turned heel and won the title, and two other matches on pay-per-view. The first one at TLC, a classic, and the other one at Royal Rumble 2019 that went off like a wet fart. Yeah, that match was just not good. No one gave a fuck about that match. And the Eric Rowan interference, no one gave a shit. I love the Daniel Bryan heel turn as his character had gotten stale and it was the right time to turn him. I also love this planet-friendly character and the fact we boo a man for being an environmentalist. Yeah, that was pretty great. How did you feel about the feud and the heel turn? Yeah, the feud was good. I mean, you're right. It kind of gets overlooked because it happened at a time where they didn't have any major matches on any major shows. They did have the rematch of the Rumble, but that was greatly inferior to the TLC match. I mean, the TLC match wasn't a TLC match. It happened at TLC. But that was a great match and one of the only best parts of that pay-per-view. I mean, that was during late 2018 when the product was just total ass. Some of the worst stuff they had put out in a long time. But they were a bright spot on the show at that point, a bright spot of the product. The matches were great. The heel Daniel Bryan stuff was great going into the Kofi Kingston feud at WrestleMania. Bryan was just amazing. I don't really think that's underrated because I think people remember how great heel Bryan was during that period. And AJ Styles, that was really his kind of last full time on top. He lost the championship. Had world championship opportunities after that, but wasn't really a regular in the main event scene ever again, like consistently after that. And that was over 5 years ago, which is kind of crazy. But I enjoyed the feud and their chemistry was off the charts. And they had more matches in the years that followed, specifically one for the Intercontinental Championship, the finals of the IC title tournament. During COVID, it was during the pandemic Thunderdome. I mean, it was actually pre-Thunderdome. It was in the PC. They had a great long match to crown a new champion, and AJ won. Bryan did not. But they still went in there and had an amazing match. So that's well worth watching, as well as the one from TLC, as you mentioned. Next question from Matt Reborn again on the Twitter machine. John Ritland on YouTube as well. Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his channel. Does great content. His question was, do you think there's any chance AEW can revamp/fix their women's division while Khan is booking the shows? I mean, there's always the chance, but the guy needs to wake up and realize that there's an issue with the women's perception as far as the talent is there. He has the talent. It's not a matter of, we don't have the women for this division to really make it mean something or worthwhile. That might have been the excuse 4 or 5 years ago. No longer, though. I mean, they have a lot of great women in that division. They just don't know what to do with them. It seems like he's incapable of creating women's stories beyond the title picture. He's done it before in Ring of Honor and other smaller shows like Rampage, but I don't know. It just kind of feels like he's plugging and playing certain women into these roles, into these spots, and it just doesn't really mean anything. It's like, all right, this person gets a title shot, they lose, on to the next thing. That's not to say Triple H can't improve in that area either. His women's division also needs some work as far as that sort of stuff goes. But I feel like I'm even more interested in their overall women's division than I am AEW's. And AEW has Toni Storm and Julie Hart killing it right now, but they need more than that. Deanna's awesome. She's a great addition, even if they get Mercedes Moné. And they already have Martinez. She's good too. Over in Ring of Honor. They have the women for it. It's just more a matter of making the women more of a focal point on the show. They're never the fucking focal point. If they ever headline, it's not because this match is all that important. It's just to kind of prove a point. Hey, I could put women on last. Like, okay, it's not a matter of just putting them on last. It's making the story in the match mean something. Like what we saw with Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker a couple years ago. That was interesting. That started off as a non-title feud in 2021 before turning into a title feud in 2022. So, yeah, I think there's a chance. He's been doing it for so long now that it's unlikely that he'll wake up tomorrow and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to make the women's division more of a priority. But getting more female voices backstage and in positions of power would help. I know they have Madison Rayne. Is there anyone really beyond that that's pushing for the women on these shows? I don't know. I mean, from what it sounds like, the team that he has in place, he's got Sanjay Dutt. Like, that's great, and Sanjay's, very talented and whatever, but we need more actual women in roles of position of power at AEW in order for this stuff to happen. I don't even know if that's really the case in WWE, but they've just kind of built up a reputation for featuring their women more in the last 10 years than AEW has in the past 5. They also have their own issues they need to work on, like I said, though. At noob_n_code TV, his question was, with so many injuries occurring since the holiday season from Charlotte to Wes Lee, with Seth Rollins injured on Monday night, how will these injuries affect any plans for WrestleMania? I mean, Wes getting injured doesn't really affect WrestleMania at all. Charlotte and Rollins do affect Mania. If Rollins gets hurt, they're kind of fucked with the World Heavyweight Championship. They have enough people that are so over right now that they can figure it out and they can move on seamlessly, but Punk and Rollins is the match. That's the match we've all been looking forward to, they've been building to. That's the match. If they don't do it, they'll figure out something else that'll be interesting, but it'll be very disappointing. So that would very much affect WrestleMania plans, and he's the fucking World Heavyweight Champion. So they would have to crown a champion, I would think, before WrestleMania, probably in the Elimination Chamber. With Charlotte Flair getting hurt, I also think that affected plans. I don't know if they were going to do this. To me, Charlotte and Bianca one-on-one sold itself at WrestleMania. Not for the championship, but they could have had a great non-title feud/match with one of them turning heel before then. Probably Bianca. I mean, Charlotte's a better heel, but they probably would have turned Bianca if I had to take a guess. But regardless, Charlotte getting hurt, I don't know what you do with Bianca now. If Sasha Banks came back, you could do Sasha and Bianca, because we never really got that rematch at SummerSlam. They did it on SmackDown around that time. We need it back on pay-per-view. A rematch from 3 years ago. Maybe Sasha wins this time. Bianca goes heel. There's a lot of different possibilities there. We need an actual women's non-title match of Mania one-on-one. No multi-tags, no fucking, the tag titles are fine, whatever. I'm talking like Bianca versus someone one-on-one. Charlotte would have been that match, but she got hurt, so that does affect plans as well. Your last question, how long until Asuka, Kairi Sane, Io Sky, and Dakota Kai turn on Bayley? Should we wait until before the Royal Rumble, during the Rumble, or after the Royal Rumble? To me, this breakup angle is going at a snail's pace since Kairi Sane and Asuka joined Damage Control. I mean, they didn't join that long ago. They joined in, November, just to be clear. But yeah, they're moving it at a snail's pace because they have I would assume, I don't want to give them too much credit, I would assume they have a timeline in mind for when it's going to happen. Same thing with the Sami Zayn thing. I mean, the Sami Zayn thing last year was very much moving at a snail's pace, but they were doing that to time the turn with the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view and WrestleMania and whatever, and it worked out perfectly. I would do the turn right after the Rumble. I mean, I guess you could have one of them throw out Bayley in the Rumble. The issue with that, though, is who then wins the Rumble? Becky Lynch? I'd rather have Bayley win the Rumble. I'd rather have Bayley win the Rumble, T's going for Rhea, and then she goes after Io instead. Again, think Evolution 05. And then they don't even have to really even turn on her. They can maybe tease it, but Bayley turns on them before. Like Sami Zayn, we all thought the Bloodline would dump him. He ended up betraying them before they could betray him. So maybe we see something similar with her. I would probably do it after the Rumble. You don't want to waste the intrigue of, they turn on her before then, and then she wins the Rumble, and it's pretty clear who she's choosing. And that would be fine. But if Bayley does win the Rumble, you have the story of, maybe she's going to go for Rhea Ripley. And that's kind of what they've already teased in like promos and stuff like that. So that's likely what I would do. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, your first question was, your thoughts on the brand new TNA Championship belts? I think they look great. I saw all the redesigns for all the championships leading up to Hard to Kill. They were very well done. They look beautiful. So, job well done there. And your third question, your thoughts on Nick Nemeth making his TNA debut at Hard to Kill. I thought it was cool. Listen, I think Nick Nemeth, I thought he was a shoo-in for AEW. I've said that before, but I still think he will end up there at some point. But going to New Japan and TNA first makes a whole lot of sense. Because in AEW, I just kind of feel like Tony Khan would bring him in as an instant challenger for the TNT title. He loses, or even if he wins, then what? You know what I mean? So I think it's probably for the best that he go to TNA first, become a bigger fish in a smaller pond, maybe win the World Championship, become TNA World Champion, kind of rehab his career and his character, find his footing outside of WWE, and then maybe go to AEW again, not again, but for the first time, debut there at some point down the road. So I think it's a smart move, and it gives TNA a big star in the absence of some other people they've lost in the past year or two, and he can become a top star for them right out of the gate. So I like it a lot. At E138 from Twitter, their first question was, do you remember when you first watched Royal Rumble 2013? So he included a picture of a tweet with someone saying, how much they hated Rock beating Punk. I have a pretty good memory, so I remember watching most pay-per-views live. But I specifically remember watching that one because it was one of the only pay-per-views I ever purchased before they joined the network. I watched WrestleMania with other people at their houses, so I never bought those myself. But I did buy the Royal Rumble 2010. That was the first pay-per-view I ever bought. Night of Champions 2010, Royal Rumble 2013, and Money in the Bank 2013. Royal Rumble 2013, especially because not only the men's Rumble, but Punk and Rock was such a big match. I didn't mind Rock beating Punk because I knew it was happening. I think we all knew that was happening like 6 months in advance. When Rock first said, I'm going to face the winner, I'm going to go for the WWE title at the Royal Rumble in 6 months. It's like, what the fuck? Okay. So you kind of knew at that point Punk was probably, going to lose the championship on that show. That didn't really bother me. I didn't like Cena winning the Rumble, but again, it made sense. The Rumble itself, I really liked the show. I thought they had a pretty good show overall. That Rumble was among my favorites for the longest time. I really enjoyed that Rumble. It's not a bad Rumble. They had good surprises with Goldust returning. You had Jericho returning, which was cool. The Godfather was a nice surprise. There was a fun Rumble. So I do remember watching the show. I made sure to not make the same mistake as I did with other pay-per-views. Maybe the Rumble was, actually, I think I did make this mistake with the Rumble. Usually when you bought a pay-per-view back then, if you have DVR, you record the pay-per-view so you can still watch it again down the road, especially when they didn't have like the network and shit. I did that with Night of Champions when I bought that in 2010. I did not do that with the Royal Rumble, I think. I did do it with Money in the Bank, but I forgot to do it with the Royal Rumble, and I was fucking pissed that I lost that I forgot to record it. I was so mad because I really wanted to watch it back. But I do remember watching it, and I remember really enjoying it. Although, looking back, it was not like the best Rumble pay-per-view or the best Rumble match they've done even in the last 15 years. Far from it. Last two questions, one being, do you think TNA could become the number 2 wrestling promotion again? No, not at all. If AEW is still around, they will never be the number 2 promotion again. TNA is great. They have their own little niche identity. Like I said, they're kind of like the holdover promotion, and they fucking know that people from their company go to other companies, or people from those companies go to their company to kind of rehab their careers before they go elsewhere. Kazarian's not going anywhere, but he's probably going to end his career in TNA, which is perfectly fine because that's where he started too. So, yeah, they're never going to become number 2 again. WWE will always be 1. As long as AEW is around, there will always be 2. If they were to close like next year at some point, then yeah, I guess that would make TNA number 2. But I guess you could also make the argument that Japan is number 2. Or even, Ring of Honor goes with AEW. So if AEW were to close, so would Ring of Honor. No, I don't think TNA will ever be number 2 again. But they're perfectly fine for what they are, and I enjoy the product for what it is. Last question, finally. Do you think Hiroshi Tanahashi should still compete while being the new president of New Japan Pro Wrestling? I mean, he could still compete. I thought it was a bit silly. I don't watch New Japan, so I don't really have a place to complain about this, but I thought it was a bit silly that like a week or so after being named the new president of New Japan, he gave himself a championship. I don't know if he's booking this stuff. I'm not really sure, but like he beat Zack Sabre Jr. for the World Television Championship. Why? And Hiroshi Tanahashi's great. I enjoyed the MJF match last year, but he's also lost a step compared to what he was even a few years ago. He's older now. He has bad knees. Does he really need to be champion, especially while president? That's pretty fucking dumb. And it's not like he's a heel and that's part of the gimmick. No, he's just... I don't know why he did that. I don't know why they did that. But otherwise, I mean, he shouldn't have to retire entirely just because he's president. He probably shouldn't be champion, regardless of whether it's a mid-card belt or the world belt or whatever it might be. But having him still wrestle is perfectly acceptable. Again, I don't really have a place in the conversation because I don't watch New Japan consistently, but I did think it was pretty funny when he won the belt when I was watching Wrestle Kingdom, because I'm thinking, didn't this guy just become president? Like, why is he champion? His focus should be elsewhere, but whatever. And that's going to do it, guys, for episode 529 here today of #AskGSM. Thank you guys, as always, for sending in the questions. I appreciate it. Like I mentioned earlier, if you did not hear your question answered, but you sent it in for this week, it will be answered next week. I will be away next week. I'm pre-recording the rest of the questions I did not get to today for next week, so keep an ear out for that. That being said, guys, you can always send in questions to me on Twitter at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the post itself, on the wall itself, that is. And be sure to drop your question down below in the comment section on this video or next week's video for your question to be included in 2 weeks from now. Not next week, because that will be pre-recorded, but in 2 weeks for episode 531. Until then, guys, have an awesome one. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.